My name is Sagatom Saha, and I'm a research scholar at Columbia University, their Center on Global Energy Policy. And I come there from a recent stint in government where I was in Secretary Kerry's International Climate Team, where I served as Chief of Staff to his energy team. But you're not here to hear from me. You're here to hear from the rest of this wonderful panel on critical minerals. And I'll do a brief round of introductions. We mostly want to leave time for some Q&A discussion. So I'm joined here today by Abby Wulf, who is Vice President and Director for Critical Mineral Strategy at Securing America's Future of Energy, or SAFE. As well, I am joined by Hilary Tompkins, a partner and environmental lawyer at Hogan Lovells and a member of the Navajo Nation. She also served as solicitor at the U.S. Department of the Interior. And then right here we have Stephen D'Esposito, President and CEO of Regeneration, a B Corp that produces biodiversity, community, and climate-positive minerals for the energy transition. He also served as chair of the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council for the Future of Mining and Metals, rather. And last but not least, I have Senator Heidi Heitkamp, who currently is director of the Institute for Politics at the University of Chicago. But I think you all know her better as the first female senator to represent the great state of North Dakota. You can give applause for that. So I'll do a little framing. And I'm glad to see such a packed room on the last day of conference at 9 a.m. I know it's hard. But I think it reflects the importance of this topic at hand, which spans what I think were a lot of discussions you heard in other rooms about the Inflation Reduction Act, broad sweeping issues of national security, geopolitics, as well as themes of environmental justice, community engagement, and social license. Themes that I think have underpinned everything that you've talked about in this convention center throughout this week. In the climate angle, critical minerals could very well be the whole ballgame. The energy transition will be minerals intensive. So everything from lithium, copper, manganese, cobalt, all the ones that I can't actually pronounce, are key ingredients to electric vehicles. Solar panels, batteries, wind turbines, and more need those minerals. We have to scale up our production and supply of them. So achieving our global climate goals will hinge upon supplying enough minerals to create and produce and manufacture these technologies at speed and scale. To create a little bit of a color picture for you, an electric vehicle needs 6 more times as much minerals as a conventional vehicle. An onshore wind farm, 9 times more than a gas plant. We might very well use more copper in the next 30 years than we have in our history so far as a species. And we may need to scale up lithium 40 times over by 2040, 20 years, just to create batteries. Great, so maybe we should just mine. We have a lot of this stuff at home. Problem solved, but not quite. Mining has a long legacy of environmental harm, community harm, and in the case of indigenous communities, broken trust and broken treaties. We've moved towards a framework of environmental justice that centers not just reducing harm, but increasing economic benefit for the communities involved. So extractive industries aren't just extractive. At the same time, we're going to hear about the national security lens in regards to the supply of existing critical minerals. Most of their refining and processing happens in China. And China has a long reach into global reserves around the world of these very same critical minerals. So with that, you don't want to hear from me. I'll turn to our first panelist, Abby. Can you explain to our audience why they should be concerned about China? What are the economic security issues and national securities at play here?
Thank you, Sagatom, and it's very nice to see you all this morning and very excited to be here with my fellow panelists. So on this stage today, I will be a bit of the national security and economic competitiveness hawk. We're here talking about critical mineral supply chains, not just because we're mining for mining's sake. We're here because all of those critical minerals that Sagatom mentioned go into key industrial resources and sectors within the United States and within our economy. So most at the forefront of people's minds today is really the minerals needed for electric vehicle batteries, because the United States, our allies, and also, it's not just governments, but our companies are making these commitments for zero emission vehicle targets. Just in the past 3 years, the number of electric vehicles on our roads have more than tripled. And according to Bloomberg, I think one of their most recent estimates says that by 2040, around 70% of vehicles on our roads are going to be zero emission vehicles. So why is this so important? This is because our automotive sector contributes over $1 trillion to our economy every year in the United States, and contributes either around 5%, either directly or indirectly to our GDP. And so, as Sagatom mentioned, the critical mineral supply chain is incredibly dominated by China. That does not mean that they have a natural geological advantage for these minerals, but their government has been very strategic in going out and purchasing stakes in deposits all around the world. They own 15 of the 19 largest cobalt producing mines in the DRC and are increasingly making connections with South American countries. They recently signed an MOU with Bolivia to get all of their lithium resources, etc. But it doesn't really matter where you dig up a rock, because that rock has to be turned into a usable compound or good, and that is where China is most dominant in the supply chain, this piece called minerals processing. They control anywhere from 60 to 100% of all processing for the battery materials. So, people say to me, Abby, who cares if China cuts off our supply of cobalt? To which I say, they're not going to cut off our supply of cobalt. We do not process cobalt in the United States, so that wouldn't really matter. And we do not make cathodes in the United States, so that also doesn't matter. What will matter is if China says, either, nefariously or not, we are the largest market for electric vehicles, so what, America, what, Ford, we cannot send you batteries, but we will send you a battery wrapped in a car, and then what happens to that critical piece of our economy?
Right. So, Hilary,
Yeah.
on one hand, we have the need to rapidly scale critical mineral mining to achieve our climate goals. On another hand, as Abby explained, there's a strong need to develop that alternative supply chain to China as we scale up. But on third hand, historically mining has brought a lot of harm to communities, especially indigenous communities, and we don't want to replicate that harm. So can you talk more about your experience navigating a diverse set of stakeholders from the hyper-local to the federal level?
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to be here. Yate, Denenishle. I don't know if there's any Navajos in the audience. No? There's always like one Navajo somewhere. So, yeah, it's a really tricky issue. In Indian country, I think the sentiment is clearly, not again. We cannot repeat history the way it's been. We are always on the short end of the stick. Nobody consults with us about what the domestic, agenda is. And I think there's a fear, a very deep-seated fear, that they will be oppressed and subjugated again in this whole process. I work today in a big global law firm. I'm the only Native partner in the firm. I'm doing that because I wanted to see if there's opportunities to bring economic wealth and revenue to Indian country in a way that it honors and respects self-determination. It's a very interesting journey that I'm on. I would say that that for me, what I'm seeing is that while there's the IRA, great, economic initiatives for tribes, direct pay, and there's a focus on clean energy, moving into energy supplies that are more harmonious with Mother Earth, reducing emissions. There's also this very big tension with being true to environmental justice. And I think that what we need to do is reset and look at how we engage with tribes. Right now, typically mines are sited, then you go through typically a federal environmental review process. Those approvals get issued by the federal government, and the tribe feels completely ignored and disrespected in that process. You've heard of government-to-government consultation with the feds and the tribes. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I don't think that that's the right model. I believe in government-to-government consultation. I believe in tribes being at the table before decisions are made. I think we need to rethink the model. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is bring tribes in early in the discussion, figure out where you site these projects in places that are low conflict locations. Have the feds come in early and convene the companies and the tribes and create that space to have those really tough conversations. We have to have face-to-face conversations that are site-specific, regionally specific, and explore ways that maybe there can be some development in this country that doesn't disrespect tribes and their sovereignty, and if there are those kind of projects, which I think we're waiting to see, seeing if there are opportunities for tribes to get economic wealth, equity, downstream generation off of these economies, and revenue supply. And I'll wrap up here, we all know that statistics in Indian country have been at the bottom, the worst statistics on poverty and life expectancy, the whole gamut, unemployment, and I'm tired of it, frankly. We got to fix it. So that's just a little bit of what I've been thinking about.
We are going to get into it deeper. And then Stephen, can you talk more about the solutions you're working on the community side and social license side?
Yeah, it's great to be here with all of you. I think we're in a bit of a pickle. It's like we woke up one day, probably around 2017, when the World Bank put out the report that said we're going to need all these critical minerals for batteries and for wind turbines and for copper and electric cables, and the demand's going to go through the roof. And I don't think we're fully, at least the community I come from the environmental community. I spent a good part of my career trying to strengthen the regulations and the accountability of mining companies. And I don't think that community, the environmental community, has truly woken up to the challenge that we face. Because what we have to do essentially is this: to accelerate the production of critical minerals, we have to accelerate social license from mining sites at a faster pace. And that's after a legacy of, as Hilary pointed out, of decades where it hasn't gone very well. And so that's the pickle or the conundrum we face, and it sounds pretty daunting. I'm actually optimistic. I'm optimistic because I think technology comes to help. It lowers the impact of some of the mines. They operate better and more efficiently. I'm optimistic because policy is helping. We have good solutions on the demand side. We have a government that's putting money into technology innovation. I think we're probably falling a little bit short, although there's some good signs on the community innovation. Like what's the innovation in how we do better community practice, and how does that get scaled? It's like that's where we have to focus, right? And so what I've done is I've decided a few years ago that kind of put your money where your mouth is, and I've started a company called Regeneration Enterprises. And what we do is we go and we say that all that waste that's left over from mining, if you've ever been to a mine site, all that tailings, well, the company targeted copper, but there's cobalt left. The company mined the copper inefficiently, there's copper left. There's new technology having difficulty getting to these sites because of policy obstacles and because the owners are a little adverse to having people come in and kick dirt where there could be liabilities. So our company is a public benefit company. So we're innovating in the model. We're saying, let's go into communities and ask a different question first. Let's not ask, can we mine the tailings or remine the tailings? Let's ask, what do you want the land to look like when we're done? What does restoration look like? And then let's purpose the revenue, or a good part of it, from the remining to get the critical minerals out of the waste. In the process, removing the metals, which is one of the major pollutants, and then you end up with a better result. And so just the remining process itself can help, but then taking the idea of taking that revenue, or a good chunk of it, and putting it into what the community wants in terms of restoration, healthier streams, healthier habitat, maybe a place that they can bring their families in after the mining's done. So that's our vision, and we're off and running. We've got backing from companies in the mining sector like Rio Tinto. We've got backing from the companies that use the metals like Apple.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to ask Senator Heitkamp to test Stephen's optimism. So what happens if we can't scale supply to match demand? Where will we be?
It's interesting because we use the term rare minerals, but what we're all telling you is they aren't that rare. We know where they are. We know where the supply is. So did China. And so China rapidly deployed lots of people to go out and buy these sites, and I would argue was ahead of the curve. And now they've basically captured the market. But other countries Right now, I mean, I don't know if you just saw a recent story about Indonesia. Indonesia realizes they're sitting on kind of the next big play, and they're going to become OPEC, right? And so now we've got the kind of legacy exploitation, and that's what it was. All of these places have been exploited in the past by various entities who have simply said, I want what you have, and I'm going to take it, right? And there hasn't been a lot of dialogue in those communities, whether it's Native communities or whether it is indigenous communities in South America, whether it's countries in South America. So now we've got this kind of problem. We've got a trust problem with what's going on right now with rare minerals. And then we have people who used extraction inappropriately, never mind the mine and reclamation of the mine. We have people who have used extraction techniques that have seriously damaged the environment. And so now we're going back to those people and we're saying, trust us. Trust us. We've got your best interest at heart, because we know that right now, if we don't take care of this supply chain problem that we have, we're not going to meet climate goals. We're not going to electrify the transportation fleet. We're just not going to do it if we don't have inputs. And so now with the supply side problem, or the supply chain problem, we need to figure out, how do we create an environment, a geopolitical, social, trust environment to actually achieve what we need to achieve. So, there's the old expression, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. Now, I will give you some optimism. The first bit of optimism is that we are making strange bedfellows, right? Because most people in the environmental climate space realize we have to have these minerals. Most people realize that we don't want to be held hostage as we look at pricing of this energy transformation, of this climate necessity. If we drive the price up, relying simply on one supply that can be held hostage, we will not be successful. There will be a commercial and a consumer backlash, because people who don't see climate as an imperative, and there's lots of people in this country, many of them in my state, who think that this is a hoax, right? That this is just we're falling off the woke, wagon, and we don't know what we're doing. So this is what I'm going to say that's probably more provocative. We have been talking now about electrification of our fleet, our transportation fleet, right? Which is great, not only, and we forget to monetize the emissions. I mean, think about that. Having electric vehicles and what that means for the city of San Francisco or LA, or any state that has an inversion where you have smog. And I mean, this is really quite remarkable when we think about it. But can we really do it? And can we really do it right? Can we build back trust in 1 year? Yep. It's going to take more than 1 year to build back trust. And so what I would say is, what's plan B? Hydrogen, compressed natural gas with back-end carbon capture? I mean, can we not let perfect be the enemy of good? Can we not look at progress over perfect? Right? And so I just think that we need to open up our minds to the huge hurdle that we have here in supply chain. And then we need to think about, what are the alternatives that maybe we should be talking about? Because we're all walking in the same direction. Maybe we need to all, maybe there's a Y in this road that we need to say we can get there using a different technology. So that's my rant.
I love that. And we'll go more down that rabbit hole a little bit, but I want to broaden it back out to the rest of the panel. Let's talk about the IRA of it all. What does the Inflation React do in regards to critical minerals? What does it not do? And I'll go straight back to you and then to the rest of
I think we should start with.
Okay.
Well, what I want to say about the IRA is not, how it can be deployed, because I think it's going to need to be amended, right, to fix for new technologies that may not have been considered at the time the IRA was passed. I think it needs to be deployed. We don't have workforce to deploy it, although Stephen tells me he was just met with some of the DOE people. He thinks they're ready. I mean, I've met with with the IRS. I have scars from implementing 45Q when I was in the Senate and begging the IRS to move more quickly. But what I would tell all of you, because every group that I've been in this forum has talked about the IRA as if it is the Bible or the Constitution. I will tell you today, the president's going to release his budget. And then what's going to happen is the Republican House members are going to respond to it. And just calibrate all of you. If you think about this, they've taken Medicare off the table, they've taken Social Security off the table, they've taken defense spending off the table. To meet their goal, you would have to cut all of the other spending of government 70%. So think about that. So what does that mean? It means that the things that have not yet happened, right? Because it's always hard in government to take something away. And the IRA is a new kind of investment. Now, I don't think that's going to happen when Joe Biden's there or when you have a House or a Senate that is Democratic. But let me tell you, we don't know what the world is going to look like, and elections matter in this space. And so if we're going to rely on the IRA, we need to build political support for the IRA that is not just partisan.
Stephen, some optimism.
I'm not sure I have it on this one, but I do think, I mean, I was just at CERAWeek, which is the big energy conference, which is largely the oil and gas companies, now joined by mining, which is the energy fuel of the future, right? And they're all over this, right? I think this is an industry pivoting to the IRA. The demand signals are crystal clear, excellent, right? It's clear that DOE is ready to do business on technology innovation. It gets back to the point we were making earlier. I didn't see the Forest Service there. I didn't see the Department of Interior, Fish and Wildlife, any of the agencies, anybody that deals with NEPA. I mean, that's where the hang up is, right? And so excellent. I think the IRA is an excellent stimulant, but we need to think about the other side of the equation.
A couple things. The IRA is for midstream production, right? It's for materials processing, battery component production. It's not really for mining and some of the issues that we've been talking about today. There's the Defense Production Act, which has hundreds of millions of dollars for feasibility studies for things right now, but there really isn't any sort of like, Canada has like an exploration incentive tax, investment tax credit. You know, we don't have anything like that in the United States. My organization sees the IRA as being pivotal to diversifying supply chains. We get really hung up on the 30D clean vehicle tax credit, the sourcing provisions within that particular provision.
And can you explain that a little bit for the crowd?
Yes. So prior to the IRA, there was an electric vehicle tax credit where you could get up to, what was the old number actually? Was it 7,500 before? Thank you. I'm a geologist new to the battery space. Just the last 2 years. Thank you. So, and there were no sort of strings attached to that. I think maybe there were some battery size requirements or something. But now there are a couple different stipulations that you need to meet to get that full $7,500. The first is a mineral and processing provision where at least 40% of your mined or the value of your mined or processed mineral materials must come from the United States or a country with which we have a free trade agreement. There's a lot of mental gymnastics going on right now over what that actually is, even because it's not a capital FTA in the legislation, whereas the U.S. Trade Representative has a list of 20 countries that we have a free trade agreement with, and so the EU is all upset about that. But I have a short time, so I won't go into all of it. And then the other, so that's for $3,500, so half the credit, and then the other half is for battery component manufacturing and production. So that has to be done in North America. So what we're seeing is so many changes in investment decisions from downstream companies trying to make sure that they can hit those sourcing provisions. So you have, Tesla saying that they are no longer, and this isn't necessarily something that we would be rooting for, because we want to see an allied and diverse supply chain. But for example, Tesla, which has like a huge battery gigafactory in Germany, is saying that they're going to be shifting production from that gigafactory in Germany to one in the United States so that they can get that $7,500 tax credit. But also, it's not just this 30D clean vehicle provision, it's also the 45X production tax credits, which give incredibly handsome production tax credits, 10% for electrode active materials, 10% for mined and processed materials, and then up to $45 per kilowatt hour for batteries produced in the United States. So that's really why our European friends and Canadian friends and all of our other friends are upset too. Right. There's like this big sucking sound. But in terms of diversifying the supply chain, it's a blunt tool. It's something that's going to take probably at least 3 to 5 years for many of these companies to actually be able to hit some of those sourcing requirements. But we see it as like a remarkable signal, because that's all we have in the United States, right? Like in China, they're an authoritarian regime. Thou shalt buy an electric vehicle. You will get, your license plate faster. You get special driving lanes. You have to enter into a lottery in China to buy an internal combustion engine vehicle there. In the EU, they have regulation. They're very efficient at regulation. In the US, not so much. We have, smoke signals and, how can we get, market, will you please do this? Like, we'll try to give you some incentives. Well, this is our massive incentive.
Hilary?
So I guess I on the IRA, what I would say is what I'm seeing out in the field is how do you actually execute? So like there's all these things and incentives, positive policy developments and incentives and all that. How do you execute? And I had a really interesting conversation with one of my clients who's in critical mining, and a really incredible tribal leader. And we just had an incredible conversation last week where the tribal leader was like, we were talking about all the IRA stuff and bipartisan infrastructure. And he was like, you think anyone's going to come out here and go through our rural reservation with a charging station? Why do you think we need a charging station out here? And, we can't afford electric vehicles. And you know what this means to me? You saying all this stuff? We got to fill out grant applications, or we got to read the forms. And we've been doing this he's mad, rightfully mad. He's like, decades, the BIA, this is bureaucracy. Now we have to figure this out? And you're telling us that, and the company is like, they want to do the right thing. They believe in environmental justice. They believe in not doing the mistakes of the past. And they're just like, we hear ya. Okay, let's think about like technical assistance. Let's think about, maybe it's some kind of role in off reservation, some kind of economic development. I mean, we are literally trying to create solutions and collaboration out of whole cloth out in the ground. I think your comment about it was interior and fish wasn't at the conference. I mean, and having been the former counsel for interior, I think we need leaders in the federal government, and we talked about loss of trust. We need leaders in the federal government that the tribes know and trust to help bring all of us together and figure out how do you execute. That's what I'm seeing.
Thank you. So there are some problems with the Inflation Reduction Act and the way it will have to be implemented and administered. So I'm going to give all of you a magic wand. You have the full cooperation of Congress, the White House. Very realistic, I know. What's one thing you would have them do? Stephen, I'll turn to you first.
He's like...
I would basically impose a royalty finally on mining on federal lands, and I would take every penny of it and apply it to remining and restoration opportunities for abandoned sites. And I think because I think at the heart of this problem we've talked about of trust is the legacy of past impacts. And so the way to go about that is to have some money to go back to the places impacted and to create a different story and do it with community participation and buy-in and benefit. So not just the environmental benefit, but the jobs and the small and medium enterprise benefits. So that's what I would do, is I would place a bet there, and there's a funding source waiting for, 1872, so like 100 and whatever years, we need a royalty, our fee on mining on federal lands.
This is probably asking too much, but I want sustainability in climate policy. And by that I mean it cannot be subject to the political winds. Because as elections happen, and you saw it the last 4 years, we lost 4 years of potential. I mean, we were implementing what we could, but elections matter. And so we've got to get everybody, and that's why it was great. I don't know if you're here for the congressman from Utah who is doing some, bipartisan work. But I think getting having the leadership in government to get a national policy on climate, because the market will respond if they think that is certain. So this is huge investment to do what we're talking about. The government has put some skin in the game with the IRA, right? And I just told you, don't think that's certain. But there still is a sense that it's not going to happen tomorrow, and I'm a politician that only has to run every 2 years or every 6 years or every 4 years. We need a national policy. So if I could wave a magic wand, I would have a national, sustainable, bipartisan policy on climate, and then allow it, with that stability, allow all of the innovation that we all know is happening out there.
I would, and I'm a lawyer, so apologies for what I'm about to say. It's going to be very dry, but National Environmental Policy Act, as I think many of you know, if you have federal funding or a federal permit that federalizes the project, you have to go through the NEPA review. And I know there's permitting reform discussions going on the Hill. What I think would be really interesting to see is codifying, passing into law, that climate sustainability or new forms of energy that reduce emissions or electrification, I'm paraphrasing here, is codified as a recognizable benefit when you're doing your evaluation of adverse impacts. For, like, say, an offshore wind farm, for instance, that it is recognized as that being a positive benefit, and then combining another positive benefit, because it's all weighing, adverse effects and benefits in NEPA, would be where you have evidence of respecting tribal sovereignty and self-determination, which in my mind, and this is something I think is really important to say, tribes are not monolithic. I find in this climate that we're in that a lot of people speak for tribes and they think they know what tribes want. And I think we have to stay away from that. When I say self-determination, it can be that the affected tribe opposes the project, and that is their right, and they can use all the legal remedies they have at their disposal. It could be that a tribe, for whatever reason, wants to support the project, wants to be part of the equity ownership of a project. It's up to the tribes. And I feel like we're not being able to have those conversations where the affected tribe can say, this is what we want. And it's our voice. And so that's that self-determination piece. If you can have that showing, which is a little different than government-to-government consultation.
I don't know if I would wave a magic wand and change anything, but I think what's next and what's needed is value propositions added on top of the sourcing provisions within the IRA. We need transparency and we need high standards to diversify supply chains. Right now, we think, it's our opinion, that it's incredibly difficult to get rid of this dangerous concentration because it's incredibly difficult to compete on cost. We think it's difficult to compete on cost because ostensibly where you're getting the materials from now, they are degrading the environment and exploiting workers in a way that would not be allowed in the United States or some of our allied or like-minded countries. And the market is failing us. I mean, because of that, additional premium on responsibly sourced goods, the market is not mining things in the US. It's not mining things, well, actually in Canada and Australia, it's a much larger percentage than the United States. But still just diversifying where those things are happening, it's because it's more expensive to do it in those places. So step one has been transparency in the IRA. You need to know where the heck you're getting your things from before you can start putting, any sort of value proposition on top of that. The EU has their battery regulation where they're trying to do everything in one fell swoop. It's something where we were able to sort of jump ahead of them a little bit by just, instituting this sort of like very blunt, like you need to get your materials from XYZ places. But the next step will be, putting environmental, putting indigenous, putting social and labor provisions on top of those sourcing provisions as well, or at least, making them available to consumers, which might be more palatable to Republicans or others in the United States that don't want to say, you can't buy a car if it's made with slave labor, even though, you probably don't want to as a consumer do that. But you can put, update the Monroney label, which is the window sticker on every vehicle that is sold, to include some sort of like lead standard or something so that a consumer can make a decision, on the vehicle that they're purchasing.
Can you add 2 sentences on what the concerns with forced labor are?
Absolutely. So right now, it's mostly to do with cobalt, which is included in the cathode of electric vehicle batteries. Cobalt primarily comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, of which, they have a remarkable amount of their reserves, but also they produce, over 2/3 of our cobalt supply as well. The DRC, historically, lower economic stature, historical corruption, also, a high percentage of artisanal mining going on in that country because there aren't a ton of ways to, provide a living for your family in that country right now. And so, cobalt deposits in that country are incredibly close to the surface. And so everyday people are able to go out and sort of, they call it artisanal mining, which really kind of throws me through a loop because I think of like artisanal cheese and things like that, which is inappropriate, I'm sorry. But I just think, they go out and they dig up their own cobalt and they sell it to a refinery, and that's how they make their living. And so occasionally, in these lower income countries, children have to do that too to help support their families. And so there is this sort of it's this extreme tension between, people saying we cannot buy vehicles that are mined with child labor. Oh, sorry, I did child labor. Child labor. And so, we should remove cobalt from the supply chain and get out of the DRC. And then you have a whole nother side of the room that's saying, no, you need to lean in to the DRC and help them do capacity building so that, kids can go to school and you don't have to do that. And sorry, for forced labor.
Long 2 sentences.
Yeah, sorry. For forced labor, it's with the Uyghur population in Xinjiang. Sorry.
You want to come?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, the senator, in talking about the wins she'd like to see, which is a stable climate policy or agreement. I just got me thinking about challenging ourselves to be politically creative, thinking about how that coalition or that space is created politically, and just thinking about the fact that we now have a significant portion of the mining industry, which would typically be opposed to any kind of climate policy, in big on critical minerals. It's their future. It's where incentives are coming from. And if we do this right, we get jobs in all different colored states, not just blue states. We get them. A lot of that workforce is in red states. And so all of a sudden, just by doing certain things and pushing certain agendas that are really constructive for climate, you end up with the potential to think differently and build different alliances politically, which is critically important.
Thanks. If I can add to that, if you look at the IRA itself, and I will confess I've not read it, but I've certainly read extensive summaries of it. This thing was written by Joe Manchin. So that tells you all you need to know about who's a big winner It's states like West Virginia. It's old legacy coal states, it's old legacy fossil states that are now being encouraged to do this transformation. And I will tell you this, because I have talked to some colleagues, they wanted to vote for the IRA. They wanted to support this new generation, and all across the fossil fuel states, governors are meeting with people talking about how they're going to implement the IRA in their state. So there is an opportunity, as Stephen said, to build this coalition now around these concepts, but we've got to take an opportunity before we miss it to build that kind of bipartisan belief in the goals of the IRA.
Quick snap poll for the audience. How many of you read any section of the bill text of the IRA? I don't expect that anyone read it in full. I know I haven't. Just good for my
I read the part where North Dakota gets a lot of good things.
Wonderful. And I'm going to tie some threads together. And I know we'll get to audience questions soon, but Stephen mentioned political creativity. Abby mentioned partners and allies. And all of this to say the concerns about climate and the concerns about China and the need for critical minerals aren't unique to the United States. And you mentioned kind of there's an idea of a critical minerals club, cooperation with the EU. What are broad prospects for international cooperation to get us out of this? Go back to you.
We have to work together with allies. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about domestic mining, but realistically, the United States has a minimal amount of reserves for all of these things. And our companies that I mentioned in my opening remarks, they don't just sell things in the United States. They sell things globally. So, you can't talk about mining things domestically for a domestic market. It's just not how it works. And also, critical minerals are sold on an international market that's incredibly opaque. So you have to work together with other countries. And also because we are dealing with a massively anti-competitive market actor in the Chinese Communist Party, which provides incredible subsidies to its own homegrown industries and also is incredibly vertically integrated, you have to work together to make sure that, you can counterbalance them putting their thumb on the scales and provide no safe havens for any irresponsibly produced goods. So that's this whole conversation around the Critical Materials Club. I mean, as I mentioned, the EU incredibly upset. Others, they don't have a capital free trade agreement with the United States. I think that argument is a bit misplaced because, again, that section is for 1/2 of the 30D clean vehicle tax credit that has to do with mining or processing. And you're really not going to be mining a ton of stuff in the European Union. They have even fewer reserves than we do.
So could it be the case that the Europeans are angry about it, but we might use that excuse to include countries like Argentina?
Yeah, fully. Argentina, my organization, was very much pushing for, instead of FTA countries, NATO and major non-NATO allies, because we've been having these trilateral conversations with the EU and Japan that now includes Canada and Australia for over a decade, since China cut off the supply of rare earth elements to Japan in 2010 and 11. So it was just kind of silly for us not to include these really key defense allies when the whole spirit and the intention of the bill is to reduce our dependence on China. I personally think it had to do with the reconciliation process and the Byrd Rule and the fact that you had to make it an economic bent. And it's very difficult to make that argument with defense treaties than it is with free trade agreements.
Can I just add, I think all the other countries that might be our allies on this front too raise similar issues about the effect on indigenous people. And so I think any kind of international conversation on this needs to figure out, shared solutions on that. I'd also mention in Canada, there's the Major Projects Coalition, First Nations Major Projects Coalition, which is really leading the way on these issues. So if you want to kind of look at a very well-established model, they're a great resource.
One of the things, and I can stand to be corrected, but is unique about Canada is the minerals are owned by the Crown, right? They're owned by the government. It's not like our system where, the surface owner owns the minerals. So there is a whole different incentive in Canada and a whole different way of looking at mining in Canada that's much more historic. And I think they are the first with the First Nations to really understand that need for collaboration. Do they do it always right? No. But I think Canada is always a model we should look at, but we should also recognize there are differences in the legal way and who benefits from mining in terms of royalties.
It's also a much larger portion of their GDP, and they have way fewer people than we do. So when you're proposing a mine, you're not going to bump into as many people as you do in the United States.
And can I just add, the other place to look in the U.S. for interesting models is the Alaska Native corporations who participate directly, economically, in the development of their lands.
Okay, so this is the last question for me. So I have one more. Start raising hands if you have questions in the audience. But in quick rapid fire, since we're running out of time, can we innovate our way out of this? Are there new technologies, alternative battery chemistries, what have you, new technology pathways? How much can that solve this?
Yes. I mean, why would we ever say no? We always have. But we have to have a glide path, and we have to know with certainty that this is going to be a priority in this country.
I would add on the upstream side, there's a rash of new technologies struggling to get to sites. I mean, I'll give you one example. A tribe in Alaska wants to retake possession of an island in Prince William Sound. It's got an old legacy mine. There's no way that could have been dealt with, but now there's a nanotechnology water treatment system that could extract the metals. It's a passive system. It would take probably a decade. We do restoration on top. The land would still have to be monitored, but the tribe could have the island back. And so those are the kind of opportunities that open up with upstream technological innovation.
Yes, absolutely. Mining is one of the oldest industries in the entire world. They've never been under this kind of a microscope before. They have not really seen the need to innovate in a really long time. There are still some of them that say, you need us, like we don't need to innovate, it's just going to happen. But we're seeing that that's, increasingly untrue. So.
Yeah, and definitely, of course, we should innovate. I think it would be helpful if the mining industry was more not open but clear, because I think they are trying to be more open, recognizing that that's going to be essential for success, but be more open about how they're mining today and what are the new technological innovations on the horizon, because there are a lot of fears out there, and there are myths too, and I think we really need to understand that better.
I just had one thing there. We need to be able to differentiate the good guys and gals from the bad guys and gals through some type of a agreed standard, because I agree 100% there are some incredible things happening today in mining, and there are still some laggards.
Yeah.
And we need to differentiate who they are.
So I've ceded my mic to the crowd, so I'm going to do some pointing, and I think the first one's here.
Hi. Oh, wow, this is loud. Hi, everyone. My name is Hanny Rivera. I'm with Ginkgo Bioworks, which is a synthetic biology company. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives today. It's been really fascinating. Kind of going after this last question on new technologies, one of the things that Ginkgo and I in particular have been thinking a lot about recently is how to use synthetic biology to recover critical minerals from waste streams like mine tailings, electronic waste, and how to use low-grade ores, which would allow us to capture more reserves in the U.S. domestically. And so I guess my question for you all is that with new technologies, there's sort of that in-between of the mining companies don't really necessarily want to take the risk on new technology. They don't necessarily want to invest in the research and development right away, and they kind of want that pilot demonstration. And so I'd be really curious to hear, especially from you, Stephen, how you're finding the best way to bridge that gap is to really kind of get them on board to trust this new technology and look for those alternatives that can provide less harm and less deterioration to the environment.
Yeah, the good news is many of them know they have that problem, right? And so our agreement with Rio Tinto is not just that they're putting an investment into our social enterprise, they're also giving us access to their closure portfolio, and now their active mine portfolio where these opportunities exist. We're talking with 3 other major mining companies at the moment to try to strike similar deals with them. We just think it's a great pathway because they control the keys to the gate at those sites. Secondly, what we need is the ability for the abandoned and orphan sites, right, to be able to get government to let us in to do this experimentation in a good, protective way. And I think those 2 things are critical. But I think, you're onto something, and part of what we need to do is get the innovators onto the ground, right, to be able to test their wares. Absolutely.
This is a question for Hilary mostly. Are there any examples of companies that are doing it right in terms of partnering with, engaging with, discussing with indigenous communities in the U.S. in particular, but maybe globally, if not in the U.S.?
I've seen it in the solar space, for sure, where there's either neighboring to reservation lands or on reservation lands, and creating economic capacity in that community. It's a work in progress on the mining front. And as you know, there is a lot of big litigation right now where it's oppositional in the mining space. And so I have hope, though. But it's a tricky issue. Offshore wind just got a National Congress of American Indian resolution seeking a moratorium on offshore wind until they, they feel they haven't been at the table. So it's a big issue, and we got to get our hands around it and get tribes to be able to have their voice heard.
Thank you so much for this wonderful panel. I've really enjoyed it. I wanted to ask about the Arctic, because I know that there's been some discoveries off of Sweden and some of the other Arctic nations, and I know there's been increased competition in the region. So I just wanted to hear maybe one or two of you speak a bit more about searching for these rare earth minerals in the Arctic. Thank you.
I can take that. Yeah, Greenland, right? Like, didn't President Trump say he was going to buy Greenland or something so that he could get rare earth elements? But Senator Heitkamp was the one who said that, so critical minerals, rare earth elements. Rare earth elements are a type of critical mineral. Not all critical minerals are rare earth elements. Rare earths is a misnomer. They're not actually rare. They're more crustally abundant than copper. They just don't occur in economically viable concentrations. So you've got to mine more stuff to process it. Processing is energy intensive. It is expensive. There are 17 rare earth elements. They're all very chemically similar. And if you only want dysprosium, you have to get all the other 16 out of the way, which is very complicated. And there's a radioactive byproduct. So that's why, it's expensive to do in the United States properly. Do you have to mine these things in the Arctic? No. You can get them from many other places. Delicate, critical environments, environments that abut or are on indigenous lands, these are all things that we're going to have to tackle. I think that increased mapping is something that we need. In the United States, it's incredibly undermapped, so you don't know actually where those reserves are, a reserve being a known economically viable quantity. And so, but I would think that, and when people are talking to me about that big Sweden article, it's the Nordic countries are very efficient in processing material. They process a lot of cobalt, they process a lot of nickel, but mining in extreme environments is expensive. And so whether or not the market is actually going to go there is one thing. That Swedish company is partially owned by the Swedish government, so maybe they have a vested national security interest in digging up those things there. But there's not an answer, but
there's a whole thing happening in the Arctic as it opens up, and a huge geopolitical fight over who has control, including China claiming part of the Arctic, and we're wondering where that works, right? If you think about Russia, they've got a legitimate access. But the other piece of this that I want to say is there's a lot of discussion about deep seabed mining. And so this is not a new concept. This has been talked about, and in fact, I wrote my senior paper in college, so you know how long it's been, talking about deep seabed mining and talking about the law of the sea. We've never ratified the law of the sea. And so what's the next play as it relates to extracting these minerals from the seabed? And that's going to be an ongoing discussion as well. So everywhere that you look, I just think Stephen is thinking, look, let's look where they are right now, where we know where they are, because that's if you can work through all of this, that's the quickest way. But you're going to see, as the price of these minerals go up, and they're traded as commodities, right? So that the price is set globally, pretty much. As the price goes up, there's going to be more and more exploration, and I would say exploitation of places that we may not want people to go. That's why it's so critical that we look to where we are, where there's already been degradation, where we can maybe fix those problems. Look at fly ash. I mean, when you look at coal fly ash, it's full of minerals that should never have been reintroduced into the ground. What's the opportunity there? So I'm not saying we can do it all with reprocessing or remining, but I think the more we can build those technologies, the more we're not going to be looking at exploiting areas that we don't want to exploit.
It saves us a bit of time, right? It gives us time, which is what it does.
Thank you so much. Okay, perfect. It's working out. Thank you so much for your very, very insightful thoughts today. As was mentioned, we can't really expect all of mining of these minerals to be shifted to the U.S. unless we're looking at a long time horizon. I have a two-part question. The first is, how can we ensure that American companies that are functioning that are mining both on demand and supply side in countries outside can be regulated from an American perspective to act in a manner that is judicious and just to the communities that they're operating in? And secondly, is there any way that you all think we can develop, we can incentivize or catalyze the communities themselves, the grassroots actions or other civil society methods to develop resilience within these communities, safeguards of some kind to extractive industry disasters?
Can I take the first one? Or
I mean, one of the things, your first question was, repeat the first.
The first question was, how can we
right. I just wanted to mention, and we haven't talked about it yet, but IRMA, which is an attempt to basically come up with an international standard where we would judge the other factors, not just environmental, but child labor, all of the other factors, to give them a rating. So I would just say this work is in progress.
I would say that IRMA is a voluntary standard. So what we need are enforceable standards. So in the United States, and we've been thinking about this in my organization, there's the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act that makes sure that U.S. actors abroad aren't bribing people. Can we use that as a roadmap to make sure that our companies are acting responsibly abroad? Also, is there some way that we can work with the three largest economies in the world, EU, Japan, United States, to say we are only going to import things into our tech-driven economies that are mined with high standards? It's very difficult, and Sagatom and I were talking about this, through free trade agreements to say, you're EU, you're only allowed to buy things if you have a free trade agreement. We can't do that. It's either through a treaty, but that's also not super enforceable. So again, trying to use this critical minerals club, which I hate that name, but to get some sort, keep the pressure on, add some transparency, and civil society groups and others can then make sure that our markets and our regulations are harmonious.
And I just 2-second add SEC disclosure rules, big, and they're struggling legally because there's not that's a whole nother can of worms, and it's major political doctrine question. Does the executive branch have the power to require that disclosure, or does Congress have to pass it? So that's another layer.
Yeah.
So I see we're almost at time, so I'm going to take these two questions together, and then we'll have to wrap up. Sorry. You can catch these folks in the hallways.
Thank you. I'll be quick. What are the prospects of mining landfills? That seems like an ore of so many different materials. And I imagine in the future, we are going to, maybe there's a generation that will say, we have so much minerals on the surface. So are we thinking now about doing that, or are we just pushing it off?
I've spoken with copper executives that have said.
Let me get the other question in. Sorry.
My question was very similar to that.
Perfect.
But just thinking about waste to energy plants and materials recovery, because I heard coal ash being said. There's some countries with hundreds of these waste to energy plants. The U.S. only has 7. So is that being made a domestic priority?
Sorry.
I would just say I've spoken with copper executives that have said the richest, most high-grade deposits are actually landfills today. The copper that we've mined so far, we've already got the high-grade stuff. We're going lower and lower grade. So I think it's only a matter of time.
It's all of the above, right? We should go get it, and we should develop technologies that can, and develop the permitting structures to do it. The same with what we're doing. What we're doing is circular economy pre-consumer, it's the waste that didn't make it into the cell phone that gets recycled. So we need to go after all that, but there's so much demand it's got to be a bit of everything or a lot of everything. I think that's the story.
Show of hands, who feels more optimistic than when they came in the room? Who feels less?
I guess you weren't listening to me.
So that is better than I would have thought. Quick last rapid fire, and we'll let folks go. What makes you optimistic?
Oh, I think all of you. I think Aspen is doing great works in critical minerals. I think we're building the education. So as much as I say, look, we could go down, guess what? We also we're taking steps up, and we're headed in the right direction. The arc is in the right direction. So that makes me optimistic.
Yeah, our phone's ringing off the hook, and that's one sign. But I think, like, having been at Sarah Week with the energy majors, the traditional majors, and then coming here, I think that combination, it's almost like we should be in the same meeting, right? And I think so. But being in those two places, having people talk about the exact same thing, makes me optimistic.
The connections and the partnerships, and just the fact that there are these incentives to use startups and new technologies, where today big companies would say, come back to me when your prices are more aligned with where China is. But now they're like reaching out to those startups like intentionally.
I'm optimistic because at the speakers dinner last night, it was the next generation of leaders in this space. And I was like, yes, like that really gave me a huge charge of energy and hope. So that's why I'm optimistic.
Quick plug. So Aspen has a Future Leaders program. I know a few of you are in the room. Can you raise your hands? So.
All right.
Yay.
That's probably a good place to end it. Thank you all for coming.